You're watching News 24 Live. Welcome to this week's World Show. Today we are talking cycling and road safety. I'm joined in studio by Larissa Smuts, who's an attorney but also an Ironman triathlete. So she has seen both sides of this argument. Larissa, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Okay, I'm not a cyclist. I get very frustrated with cyclists when I'm driving because they don't often obey the 1.5 meter rule. They don't often cycle in single file, hog the road. Defend them.
Defend them. All right, I think there are numerous aspects to consider. There's frustration from both sides. I think I'm a motorist and a cyclist, and from that aspect, I can see the two sides to the argument. Firstly, it's now been legislated. There is a 1 meter. There's a 1 meter gap that you need to stay away from for motorists versus, and that is now part of our Western Cape Provincial Road Traffic Act. All right. So the biggest issue is, well, there are a number of things to consider. The camber of the road. Roads often slant down towards the sides, and it's incredibly difficult for a cyclist.
What does that mean?
The camber, the way that the road runs towards the pavement, the gradual decline. And in some parts, the road is constructed in such a way that it's quite an aggressive decline, that it's almost impossible to cycle against that angle. So cyclists, you might think that they a third of the way in the road, they're actually just desperately trying to pass that section so they can move on forward. And then you often get the congestion. Motorists are aggressive and frustrated. They want to overtake. The cyclist actually wants to move past that dangerous section. So nobody's waiting. Everyone's trying to rush. It's frustrating. The other thing is huge amounts of debris in the road. This we usually see on a Saturday or Sunday ride after a weekend. People have been drinking, and for some reason they throw their bottles and everything out of the windows. And for that reason too, you unfortunately don't see it from far away, but as you approach that section of the road, you're almost forced to swerve into the road again to try and avoid the debris. So it's all very dangerous trying to avoid that. That said, the 1.5 meter rule was what was they tried to campaign for that, the PPA Association, the Pedal Power Association. They did not get the 1.5 meter passed, and I understand that. It's a very wide distance, and our roads, especially in the Western Cape, they're fairly narrow in parts. A 1 meter rule is what has been legislated. That said, no 2x2 riding, single line, and so forth.
But cyclists are always up in arms. I mean, there's been a lot of cycling deaths. I mean, you know, taxis especially just sort of disregarding, I mean, anyone really. And, you know, unfortunately cyclists have been victims of that. But a lot of cyclists don't obey these regulations. I mean, how do you account for the non-sort of single file cycling, taking up a whole lane? Is a bicycle considered a vehicle?
In terms of the law, it is considered. That's why we get to share the road as normal road users. That said, however, there will have to be implementation of some or other penalties in place for cyclists who do not adhere to the rules. It is unfortunately a road that's shared between motorists, pedestrians, these days skateboarders, guys on rollerblades. I mean, people are starting to commute more and more, and there's definitely a movement towards including not only professional or amateur cyclists, but general commuters to using a more environmentally friendly mode of transport. There's going to have to be a measure of understanding between motorists and cyclists. However, there's a very fine line. There is definitely a lawlessness at times with the cycling fraternity. I don't know if it was built with fear, because they are the more vulnerable on the roads, and fear often causes aggression or retaliation in different ways. But the thing is, we've just got to all work together. There's got to be a tolerance, and there's got to be a penalty system in place. I think one of the biggest problems we have in South Africa with regard to the road laws in general is people happen to use laws almost like a guideline. You shouldn't use your cell phone while you're in your car, but you use it until you see a cop, then you quickly put it down. I've seen people cycling using their cell phones, people not using helmets, people driving like maniacs with unroadworthy cars. You know, there's just too much lawlessness when it comes to driving in general. Pedestrians themselves, then there should be a movement against pedestrians who cross when a robot turns orange or red. It's sort of a general hint that you may perhaps want to prevent, stop walking. and people are generally fairly lawless. And until you put a penalty in place that's actually going to be implemented, because that's the other problem. It's great to have laws and it's great to have guidelines, and until it's enforceable, it's of no actual practical effect.